fire, we please stand the fire.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get into the Line of Fire now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
When a lion roars, it's declaring its lordship over its territory. It's calling its lionesses to it. It's warning intruders that its dominion is not for sharing. It's anticipating the feast which is to come.
That is the voice of Derek Frank from the DVD docudrama Let the Lion Roar, which expands on a powerful vision that God gave Derek 25 years ago to, quote, complete the Reformation. Even saying that God gave him a vision provokes controversy in some circles, and saying that God gave him a vision to complete the Reformation really provokes controversy. And a few months back, we had Derek on the air. We featured Let the Lion Roar, got a great response because of that, and a lot that's happened in these intervening months. We've asked Derek to come back on. Hey, Derek, welcome back to the Line of Fire. Thanks for joining us.
Michael, it's really great to be with you. I'm really excited. I was just thinking about it. We can share more of the fire of the lion on the Line of Fire.
Well, excellent. I like that. You had prominent Hollywood actors participating in the docudrama, prominent Messianic leaders. How far has it gotten out? What kind of distribution have you seen?
Michael, here is the most amazing thing. Right now, we started really marketing the release of it about 9 months ago. We are now on our 48th country that it's gone out to. Absolutely amazing that this message has reached out to places we would never have imagined being able to reach ourselves. We don't know how many people have actually watched it, because every DVD video gets watched by several people. There's lots of screenings have gone on. We're certainly well over the 50,000 figure of the people who will have seen it. We also have much interest from global Christian TV stations for airing in the coming year. And ultimately, Michael, you can only say it is just God's enabling. We started just with our sort of 5 fishes, or 5 loaves, I should say, and 2 fishes, and God has multiplied it. And I think the message of Let the Lion Roar clearly is something that he has just put his blessing on, his anointing on, that it can really go out so far, and indeed so fast.
Now, obviously, you've had a lot of criticism. There's been controversy surrounding this. Interestingly enough, one of the strong critics of the docudrama is my good friend, Dr. James White, who guest hosted for me when I was in Singapore 1 week ago today. And you've had criticism coming your way. What about the fundamental criticism of who do you think you are? Who is Derek Frank to, quote, complete the Reformation? Could you address that?
Michael, first of all, I'm absolutely no one other than I am someone in Christ who, like everyone else, has the standing that they have. But the fact is that I didn't go looking for this vision, and I think the reality of all those who receive visions, if God gives them to you, then you have to pick up the ball and run with them. And that's an issue between James White and God as to why he should use Derek Frank. The fact is God gave a vision, and I have to say that in us just pursuing this, there is no way we could have made this happen if God's anointing had not been on it. You know this verse from 1 Corinthians 3 about how one plants and other waters, but God alone makes it grow. And the acid test of putting this message out there was, did it spread? And I think that the evidence is that people have huge, huge hunger for this message. People are deeply perturbed about the world in which we're living, the trends of things that are going on, the question of the significance of Israel, and in many senses the apparent impotence of the church to speak into this. I mean, the idea that we just need a slightly better theology, or maybe we need a better church outreach program, or perhaps we need a better church building, do an extension, this just does not hack it, Michael, in the days we are in, when times are just moving so fast. There's a very fundamental issue at the basis of all this as to where does the church actually stand in the times we are in. And this phrase of the lion roaring, which you get at the end of Hosea, you get it through Joel, you get it on to Amos. This is what fervently, I believe, God wants the church to be doing. It has in it, though it so often does not realize it, the Lion of the tribe of Judah who wants to roar through the church at this time. And there's a very fundamental question as to why is that just not happening. Time is running out fast, Michael. I mean, we don't know how much longer we've got. It could be shorter, it could be longer, but the time is getting shorter and shorter. And Proverbs 28 speaks about how the righteous should be as bold as a lion. You just don't see that boldness in the church for the times we're in. We have to ask very, very searching questions. And so if God gives a vision which leads to a word which people respond to, that is just God's doing. And so criticism comes our way, so be it. So be it. That is fine. The big question is, are lives being touched and are lives being changed so the lion can roar through the church at this time?
All right, so Derek, let's go through the different responses you're getting, because here's what surprised me. Because I wrote about anti-Semitism in church history in my book, Our Hands Are Stained with Blood, in 92, and we've had that out so many years, and it's gone into many languages around the world. And because this was something I was confronted with as a brand new believer, literally within weeks of coming to salvation, talking to the local rabbi, these issues began to come up. So this is for me as late 71, early 1972. So I kind of assume everybody at least is vaguely familiar with this and some familiar in detail. What surprised me was how many people who watched the DVD were absolutely shocked and mortified, and to know that some of this history took place. I just thought, well, it's common knowledge. Most people don't know it really well, but it's common knowledge. So you're getting all types of different reactions. What are the range of reactions?
I think, first of all, Michael, there are very, very different reactions. And the extraordinary of doing what we're doing is then to engage with, first of all, those, they've already got the message they know about. They are so grateful that someone has produced a resource that can actually be shared in a way that enables you to have dialogue about Israel, and particularly, as you say, about the issues of anti-Semitism, in a way that is actually doable. This is a unique resource. It's there, you've only got to find the on button on the DVD, and people don't have to know church history. They don't have to be theologians. They don't even have to be readers. They can just see a high-impact docudrama, and as they watch Let the Lion Roar, they can be taken into the shocking reality of how anti-Semitism started really almost from the beginnings of the church, and how it's this strand which goes on through history. So the people who already know about this, we have had so many really enthusiastic thank yous from people and people who have bought in bulk in order to share it, people who've done screenings. So there's that one category, incredibly encouraging. Then there's another group who are often even more euphoric, as the ones who, through the film and the book which goes with it, Escaping the Great Deception, have got the breakthrough. Now, for some, we had one person say, I watched the film 5 times before I could understand what it was about. And I was so angry at the start and so incredibly grateful at the end. And so you get people, but God has just, through the conviction of His Holy Spirit, used the film, used the book, used the scriptures at the back of the book to give them a breakthrough. And once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. And so there's been this enormously positive response from people like this. Then, as you mentioned, that we've had some very strong anti-reaction. But the strange thing is, actually, the anti-reaction only encourages me, because I don't think people would be really as rattled as they are if there wasn't something in this which is actually disturbing their thinking pattern, challenging their theology. They may not use the word theology, but certainly their mindset. And, in this, even though it's a bit upsetting, and you do find that the way people speak to you, they often come at you with a torrent of words, either verbal or written. They use very selective arguments. Sometimes they're very belittling, and actually, if you're being quite rude, rarely do you have a sense these folk who are against it start the approach very humbly of saying, teach me your way. And I understood something of what Galileo must have gone through when he challenged the church about whether the sun actually went round the earth or whether it was actually the other way round. But so there's that group of anti-reaction, but here's the one who really I've struggled with most of all, Michael, and it's just the huge grouping of what you can only call total disinterest. And the fact that people may react negatively, it's upsetting, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Something's going on. It's this huge number for whom there is just no apparent interest. And these are the ones that I really struggled with. And I struggled for a long while until I was reminded of the way Jesus answered the disciples when they said, hey, why do you keep using parables? People just don't understand what you're saying. And he speaks about these shocking words about seeing but not seeing, and hearing but not hearing or understanding. And actually, he's referencing those words in Isaiah 6 about people with calloused hearts. And effectively, what God does when people have a calloused heart is he gives them the desires of their heart. If they don't want to know, then he makes it even harder for them to know. And so what you see in this huge grouping of disinterest is this being outworked before your eyes. But then, of course, the way Jesus ends, as he said, is, but how blessed are those of us who can see and who can hear. How privileged we are to be able to have this. And so this thing then turns around and becomes very galvanizing, but also very shocking, as I think what we're seeing is like the sifting of the end-time church as to those who are truly serious and those who actually only want, might be, a gospel of convenience and comfort and don't want to be disturbed in any way.
All right, friends, we're going to come back with more of Derek Frank, making some very strong claims there. I'll tell you how you can get this resource when we come back.
Oh, God of burning, cleansing flame, send the fire.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown, your voice of moral, cultural, and spiritual revolution. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
The Jews were the sons of God, but now they are the sons of Satan. The true image of the Hebrews is Judas Iscariot, who sells the Lord for silver. The Jews will never understand the scriptures and forever bear the guilt for the death of Christ.
That is a quote from Augustine on the docudrama Let the Lion Roar. You might say, Augustine? I mean, he was one of the great church leaders. Yeah, some of the greatest church leaders had some very ugly things to say about the Jewish people. And I'm thrilled that there's a resource out. It's compelling. I don't know anything like it that's been done. It gives voice to some of the harsh comments, ugly comments by people like Martin Luther and others against the Jewish people. Why have these things existed in church history? How can we address it today? A powerful docudrama where these things are laid out, going through church history and God's purposes for Israel. Look, there are serious believers who love Jesus and are standing for the Lord and are following him by life or by death, who don't agree with my position on Israel, the Jewish people, who have different takes, and they're committed, solid believers. However, if you're a committed, solid believer, you must renounce the ugliness that happened in the past. You must recognize it and renounce it. And like no other tool I've seen, this docudrama is stirring the discussion about anti-Semitism in church history. To get this, here's the resource package. The DVD, the Blu-ray disc, 2 CDs of interviews with Derek Frank and Messianic leaders Paul Wilbur and John Burness and Sid Roth, and the accompanying book that goes along with the DVD and Blu-ray. All of this for just $30, postage paid. Let the Lion Roar. Call or order 1-800-278-9978, 1-800-278-9978. Or if you want to watch some excerpts from the DVD, go to my website, Ask Dr. Brown, askdrbrown.org, and click right on the homepage. You'll see the resource offer. Back with Derek Frank. Derek was the producer of this DVD and is the presenter on it in a very compelling way. Derek, since the DVD came out last 9 months, when you look at Israel, Jewish people worldwide, is your heart stirred in terms of a sense of greater urgency?
I think one of the staggering things, really, you might even say from not just 9 months back, but let's say 3 years ago when we set out on this project, Michael, how much the world has actually changed. I've actually been living in France, or on the edge of France, for the last 20 years. And we've only just moved over to the U.S. And so obviously we greatly watched the whole Charlie Hebdo issue, Je suis Charlie. And one of the things which struck me so much about that in many senses is rooted to a Muslims in France issue. I mean, it's a huge percentage, something like 10% of the French population is Muslim. Marseille is 40% Muslim. Why is it that it should suck in anti-Semitic issues into what was actually apparently a Muslim issue. And what you just see is the rise of anti-Semitism going on. You saw the shootings in Copenhagen, in France now, which is the second largest population of of Jewish people outside Israel. And Aliyah is now at its highest level. There is much going on in the rise of anti-Semitism, and some would say you can make connections to the early 30s. And the huge question the church had back then and has still not resolved to this day is the presence of Jewish people amongst us anything to do with the historic people of God? And there is just so much ignorance about that. We see that issue coming to the surface, but even the last 9 months, Michael, you don't need me to tell viewers about ISIS and Boko Haram arriving on the scene. And the last 9 months ago, when we released it, I mean, the notion of publicized beheadings and the killing of tens of thousands of Christians coming to public awareness, I mean, that just wasn't there 9 months ago. You can see the rising pressure on Israel, the threat of nuclear threat from Iran. You see the overspill from Syria and BDS growing by the day. You can look also in the whole scene, as I think you spent a lot of time talking about, what I would just describe as the rise of a justified intolerance of what's deemed to be unjustified intolerance, especially over gay issues. The world is shifting fast. I think things are shifting much faster than most people realize. I was reminded, I went to an evangelistic rally as a boy over 50 years ago, and I still remember the evangelist using the picture of a man drifting down the river in a boat. It's a lovely sunny day. He is just so happy. He's asleep in the boat, and he goes past a sign which says, "Danger, we're ahead." And he only wakes up too late when he's past that sign. And I think that in my watching what's going on in world events, but particularly this variety of reactions to Let the Lion Roar, the shockingness is how many people have so little perception of the times we're in, let alone the prophetic timeline that Scripture speaks of. They don't even seem to realize there's a prophetic timeline that's being outworked, let alone where we are on it. And that's why the roar of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, which Amos speaks of as a warning to the people of God who thought they were just fine with God. And Amos was saying, hey, you don't know who I am. I'm just an unknown prophet. But I've heard the roar of the lion. And he's warning you that if you don't respond, judgment is just around the corner. And I believe there's such parallel to this day, which even if it seems shocking to many to say, hey, the time is getting very short. We might in a very short time look back at that glorious freedom we had in 2015 when radio shows could discuss things like we're doing now, when you could release films and say the things you could. Time's possibly going to change much, much faster. And it's not the time in a few years' time to then get sorted out on these issues. We have to get sorted out now if as a church we're going to stand, and in particular take the opportunity of the times to do what God wants his end-time church to do in the times we are most likely going into.
All right, well said, and said with great passion. Derek, I want you to stay right there so we can continue the conversation for a few more minutes into the next half hour. I do have a few more questions I want to ask that I didn't get to yet. Look, friends, whatever your sense is about the return of Jesus, if you think he could be coming tomorrow, or if you think we could have 500 years of history ahead of us, if you are pre-trib, post-trib, no-trib, if you are amillennial, post-millennial, premillennial, dispensational premillennial, whatever your eschatological system, you've got to agree that we're living in critical times. You've got to agree that we're living in unique times. You've got to agree that in America, we've never seen times like this. Around the world, we've never seen times like this. I don't mean it's the worst season in history in every way. God's doing amazing things around the world. These are critical, urgent times. And Let the Lion Roar addresses a critical, urgent issue, namely Israel's relationship with the church. We come back, I want to ask Derek, why is it so important that the church understands God's purposes for Israel? Why does that really matter? We'll talk about that when we come back. To get the resource, tremendous package, DVD, Blu-ray disc, book, 2 CDs, just $30, postage paid, beautifully packaged as well. Go to AskDrBrown.org, AskDrBrown.org. Right on the home page, you'll see the resource offer. Click on it. You can watch a video that will tell you more.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, activist, author, international speaker, and theologian, Dr. Michael Brown. Your voice of moral, cultural, and spiritual revolution. Get into The Line of Fire now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Welcome. All right, I guess we're going to skip that lead in there. All right. 866-34-TRUTH. This is Michael Brown, and freshly back from Singapore. Delighted to be on the air with you. Speaking to Derek Frank, who is the presenter on the compelling docudrama, Let the Lion Roar. Derek, before the break, I asked you a question. Why is it so critically important for the church to understand God's purposes for Israel? We've got enough things to deal with in spiritual life and walking with the Lord and winning the lost and so on. Why is this so important?
In one word, Michael, at the root of so many of the deceptions and weaknesses that actually characterize the church today, I've got a huge long list of them that if we had an hour or two, I could run you through 10 or 12 different crucial areas, all stem back from the disconnection of the church from its Jewish roots. But if we want to put it in one very simple picture, imagine a brick wall, and this brick wall, the more beautiful, the higher it goes, the more beautiful it gets. Its brickwork is just amazing. But at the base, there is a crack. Now, when the shaking comes, it does not matter how brilliant the brickwork is further up the wall. If there's a crack at the base, it falls over. We are entering a time almost certainly of, you might call, both shaking and sifting. I think we're seeing that already going on around us and in the church. And this time is getting nearer and nearer. Only that which is firm at the base is actually going to stand. So first off, you just have to be sure of your foundation. And there is a fundamental disconnection of the church from its foundation if you don't understand the role of Israel in God's ongoing purposes and the place of the believer in that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there's going to be enormous spiritual battle. I think in the way in the book of Revelation, the battle goes from heaven to earth and from earth back up to heaven. This is what we're going to see on earth, more and more spiritual battle in the heavenly realms coming down more and more on earth. Now, if I can just use a quick illustration, back in June 1944, my father was on the front lines that landed on the beaches of Normandy, and at that point, World War II was effectively won, and Hitler was defeated, but more people were killed between June 44 and May 45 when the final victory took place. Now, the battle is going to be, Jesus is going to come back exactly on schedule. I mean, whether you or I do anything or nothing, he's coming back on that day. But the fact is that what goes on in between depends hugely on the ability of the church not only to stay standing, but to be able to fight spiritual battle. You cannot fight spiritual battle if you're not connected up to God wrongly. If you think you just get the new covenant directly from God, you're like a car thief who's hot wiring a car, who's bypassing the whole ignition system. And you are just doing it falsely. You're actually usurping something that's not truly yours. You have to understand how to be properly connected up to God, because we have an opportunity in these times, Michael, I think, which is both on the one hand, it's going to be a terrible problem for those who are not properly connected to God, but for those who are truly wired up, those who know how to stand in God, the opportunity of these end times to stay standing and ultimately to do the thing Romans 11 speaks of, which is to make Israel envious. We who are Gentile believers can actually stand like that. This is going to be a glorious opportunity for saving huge numbers of spiritual lives. So really, Michael, the opportunity of our time, I believe, is immensely exciting. You know, Charles Dickens, if I can just say this, the English author Charles Dickens, who wrote A Tale of Two Cities, he starts the opening words, said, it was the best of times and the worst of times. And I think that's what we're going to move into more and more and more. It's going to be the worst of times in many, many ways. But for believers, our spiritual opportunity, this is the best of times in all history to be living for how God can use the likes of you and me to fight and to win spiritual battles.
I heard the roar. It was the roar of the Lord who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
the voice of Derek Frank, the docudrama Let the Lion Roar. And when Derek said it had to be the Lord to fund this, to put it together, to get it done, to get it distributed, I've met with Derek and his family privately, and we've chatted about these things and how amazed they are that they're able to do this, because it's not their history in terms of, well, I mean, how do you get Kevin Sorbo and Jason Berkey and Eric Roberts and Stephen Baldwin and others to do the play the roles of John Calvin or Martin Luther or Augustine or Jerome, or get Jackie Velasquez to join in, get Sid Roth to play a Holocaust survivor, Paul Wilbur and others to make, quote, angelic appearances. How do you put this together? Well, if God helps you, you can do it, and that's how this DVD was put together. A compelling docudrama will take you through church history, and you'll find out about some of the horrible anti-Semitism that's existed, some of the negative sentiments towards Jews, some of the blind spots towards Israel, and God's purposes for Israel and the Jewish people. And like anything else, some things you'll get upset with, some you'll fall to your knees over, some you'll agree with, some you'll disagree with. But as you watch, you'll be stirred. Hey, Derek, I've got one last question for you. As you are talking to Christians, Christian leaders and others who have been impacted, who've realized how the church has cut itself off from its Jewish roots, realized how things that would have been basic Jewish foundations in the first century, the biblical calendar and things like that, how those have been just completely rejected. And you're Christian if you celebrate Christmas. You're not Christian if you celebrate the Seventh-day Sabbath or Passover or something like that. We're not talking about Christians trying to become Jews. You're very strong on the call of Gentiles to be Gentiles and to join together with Jewish people in God's purposes. But those who've, quote, gotten it, those where the light's gone on, what's happened to them? What kind of effect has it had on their lives?
Michael, I think one of the extraordinary things is finding ourselves being connected up with people all over the world. And, we've just concluded a deal in Brazil with a lady who's just translated the book out of her own volition in French. You find people being deeply touched. And one of the things that strikes me is a phrase I heard many, many years ago. All it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. It's a brilliant phrase. All it takes is for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. I just don't have the time to tell you the stories we've got of people who, in a sense, perhaps a bit nervously, have taken out this film and the book because we've shared with them the message that God didn't just call us to release a movie, but to release a movement, and find that God not only enables them to speak of these issues in a way they never would have done otherwise, but they also grow in understanding. To those who have, more will be given. And the experience we've had of people saying, hey, this has taken us on a journey. This has transformed our grasp of what the gospel is about and what the call of believers really is in this time. And the reality is that so many believers know the Lord as the Lamb of God, but not as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so when everyday people have just taken this box and they've not just bought one and studied it themselves, they bought a pile and they shared it with others, they find the exact same experiences that I mentioned earlier, that there are some who are just sort of so grateful, others who get very argumentative, others who are disinterested. But that is the calling, I believe, in our times, just to follow in the tracks of Jesus, who had the exact same experiences himself. And so God is putting anointing and blessing on this message, notwithstanding the limitations in the film or the book, notwithstanding personal limitations as we share it. I think one of the staggering things to me is to experience that when we speak about the distinction between following a lie or the lion, a phrase as simple as that, following the lie or the lion, it absolutely crystallizes for people what the issues are actually about. So we're living in times of great opportunity, and I just want to say to any believer who's listening to me, just get hold of this message and pray for the Holy Spirit's conviction about who you should share it with, because every one of you is somewhere unique. Every one of you has a unique story. Every one of you has a unique opportunity. And it is God saying to you, I want to speak through you at this time about the crucial importance about Israel's role in the plan of God and what this means for everyday believer. And so this is all I would simply want to say, Michael. You only discover when you take a step of faith what happens. But I promise for those who will take steps of faith, they will find that God will speak through them about this most crucial message, which is so urgent for these times.
Well said, articulate, sharp, and clear. Derek, thanks for making the effort to put this together, and continued success. And let the controversy come, and let that be used for people to be sharpened in the truth. Thank you once again for all the hard work, and blessings to you and your family.
Great to be with you. Thanks indeed.